Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. 417 from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. This is the Zach Gelb Show right here on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Life goes on for the Philadelphia Eagles. They will be without Carson Wentz for the rest of the season. Unfortunate news, as we know. Wentz did have his surgery today in Pittsburgh. And now the Eagles will get behind Nick Foles as the starting quarterback. Nick Foles back with the Eagles as we know it, and back in the starting position at quarterback. And he'll try to have the Eagles lead their way into the postseason. We already know the Eagles are going to the postseason. And the question is, how far can Nick Foles take them? Now joining us on the David Lerner Associates hotline is royalty here in Philadelphia. Does a great job covering the Eagles for many, many years, and that's Ray Didinger of NBC Sports Philadelphia. Ray, appreciate the time as always. Thank you so much, and how are you?
I'm fine, Zach. How are you doing?
Well, we know I'm doing great. We know injuries are a part of the game, and it's somber news, though, especially when you have such a young star in Carson Wentz in year number 2, and he was in the midst of a 33 touchdown passes this year to 7 interception season, and people saying the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, people talking about an MVP type of season, and the next thing you know, it comes to an immediate stop with the injury up against the Rams. Just how about what you were able to see in Carson this year, especially in year number 2 when he did a complete 180 from last year? In a year that was good last year, but this year was just off the charts.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a remarkable step forward for him from where he was as a rookie to where he was this year, which was a legitimate MVP candidate. Yeah, that's a remarkable growth chart for a young quarterback, and he played great. You know, and I thought that the conversation of him as an MVP was totally warranted. I think that, you know, there's a short list of guys that you would even consider for that. I mean, Tom Brady certainly is there, and Russell Wilson you would say was there, and you could probably make a pretty good case for Antonio Brown, but Carson Wentz was right there, and I think that the organization and the coaches, they all knew that they had a real keeper in this kid. But I think even they would tell you that they were a little bit surprised that his step forward in his development was as great as it was this year. I mean, he was terrific in every way, and it's losing him is a big loss. There's no question about that. But you know, Nick Foles is a guy that's played before. He's won games in this league before. He's been to the playoffs before and played pretty well, even though they lost that game. So, you know, I think the city was really in mourning on Monday, was the feeling I kind of got, that everybody thought that, oh, well, that's it, we're done. But I think now people are starting to maybe catch their breath a little bit, and nobody's going to say that you're as good as you were before the game in Los Angeles, but I think people are starting to say, you know what, this is really a good team. And as good as Wentz was, it wasn't just about one guy. So I think people are starting to look at this and say, you know, we still might have a chance.
Yeah, it's amazing, the optimism, because I thought it was going to be a very negative outlook when you lose a player of the caliber of Carson Wentz and what he was able to do this year. I'm someone that I don't believe, I just don't feel it anymore in my gut, that this team can win a Super Bowl without Carson Wentz. So I'll ask you this. If you had to make the case on why they could still do it with Nick Foles, what would that argument be?
Well, I think if they hang on to the number 1 seed, and they get to the playoffs and they've got the bye in the first round, and then they have home field advantage through the NFC, I absolutely think they can get to the Super Bowl. And then when you get to the Super Bowl, then it's one game, and then who knows? But I definitely think that if they go in and they're the number 1 seed and they've got home field throughout the NFC playoffs, I still think that they've got a really good chance of getting there. I mean, because they're a good team. They really are. I mean, the defense is good. They can run the ball. Their special teams are good. I mean, the quarterback play was great this year, and there's no doubt. And Wentz was just terrific. But again, if you've got a guy in Foles that's played enough and won enough that he knows he can play, I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed. I mean, he came in there in a very tough situation on Sunday, with his team trailing and his teammate reeling from the loss of Wentz. And he went out there and, you know, got you a field goal on his first possession, got you a field goal on his second possession, and on his third possession when you needed him to hit the clutch third down pass to bleed the clock, he did that too. So I think I think he and the team walked away from that game saying, that we can still finish the mission. We'll just we won't have Carson, and nobody's kidding ourselves. It's not going to be easy. The task has become more difficult, but I don't think anybody feels at this point that it's out of reach.
If you look at it, we know they have a good defense. We know they could run the football. Just my concerns with Nick Foles, and I know we're a long ways away from 2013 when he protected the football, 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and has had some seasons since then when he wasn't able to protect the football, not at that rate, but just consistently. I'm concerned about protecting the football with the quarterback in Foles, and then also you've seen it many times this year, Carson get in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and convert. I know he did it with Aguilar late in the game on a Sunday, but those are two things, the third down conversions and then protecting the football is what concerns me.
Well, sure. I mean, that's perfectly logical, but it doesn't mean that this guy can't do it.
Sure.
And I think that's the problem that some people have here is they think that all of that went away when Carson Wentz went down, and it didn't really. I mean, you still have the same other people on the offense, and as far as him protecting the football, as long as the offensive line protects him, I think he'll protect the football. I mean, he was never a huge turnover guy in his previous time playing, and they'll have to do some things differently. I would expect them to lean on the running game more. They should, but the fact is they have a good running game. I mean, they can run the ball, and I think last week Jay Ajayi had 15 carries, which is the most that he's had in any game so far. It looks like his role is expanding with each week as he gets more familiar with the offense, and he'll get more opportunities now because I think they're going to run the ball more now with Foles under center. That's what they should do. And if they do that, that'll take some of the pressure off Foles. It'll cool off the other team's pass rush because they're going to have to think run first. And I think Nick is. If you compare him straight up with Foles, I mean, the big difference is he doesn't. If you compare him with Wentz, I mean, the big difference is he does not have Wentz's mobility. And there are certain plays that breakdown plays that Wentz was able to rescue and turn a negative play into a positive play. Well, Nick's not going to do that. But you're not asking him to be Carson Wentz. You're just asking him to be Nick Foles. So if they change up the offense a little bit, they get the ball out of his hands quicker and run the ball more. And let their defense play, I still think they're going to be a very tough out in the postseason.
Talking to Ray Didinger right now on the David Lerner Associates hotline. You mentioned the offensive line. They've been serviceable since Jason Peters went down. Brooks having a good year. Lane Johnson having a very good year. You talk about that mobility from Wentz, and it does help out the offensive line. How do you view this offensive line, what they've been able to do since Peters has gone down and now where they're at currently getting ready for the Giants game?
No, they're struggling at left tackle. There's no question about that. I mean, Vaitai has not played well. Bottom line, and the last couple of weeks he's gotten beaten up by Frank Clark out in Seattle, and then last week Donald. Now they're good players. It's not like he's getting run over by second stringers. I mean, they're good players, but they have to be concerned about that. And it became a really acute problem last Sunday when Stefan Wisniewski went out with his ankle injury, and then they really got soft on that left side. Chance Warmack came in and didn't play very well, and they pulled him out and they replaced him with Ike Seumalo, and he didn't play very well. And so the whole issue on the left side just became exacerbated. Vaitai was already struggling, and then when you lost Wisniewski at guard, then the guard position sprung a leak. And so that was a real problem. And I don't know where they stand. At guard right now. Wisniewski, I believe, did not practice today.
He did not, but I was at Doug's presser today. They expect him to be good to go for Sunday.
Okay, well, he better be.
They need him. That's for sure. They need him at that left guard spot.
Yeah, I mean, he gives them some stability there. And the other two guys were really struggling last week. So they definitely need to get Wisniewski back. And some of Vaitai's problems to me, they seem to be coachable. All you have to do is really just work on his setup, work on his footwork, and tell him to stop giving up the inside all the time. I don't understand how he keeps just letting pass rushers get inside of him. It's such a fundamental point that I can't imagine that, I have to think that Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, is showing him on film and showing him on the little slate board and drumming it in his head that you can't let guys beat you inside. You have to, all that traffic, you got to keep pushing it to the outside and try and get the ball past the quarterback. You can't let him take the short route inside to the quarterback, but he keeps doing it all the time. It's just as simple as that. They're going to have to get him playing better. Wentz was able to get around some of that because he was able to run away from some of that trouble. Well, Nick's not going to be able to do that. So if Nick's going to have any chance to run the offense, they're going to have to get really good offensive line play. They're fine on the right side. Johnson has played well. Brooks has played very well. I think Brooks, I don't know if he's going to get to be in the Pro Bowl this year, but he certainly, I think, has played at a Pro Bowl level, and Kelsey has played very well. So from center out to right tackle, I think they're pretty good. But the left side, especially if Wisniewski is less than 100%, could be an issue.
Talking to Ray Didinger right now on the David Lerner Associates hotline, wrapping up with Ray Didinger from NBC Sports Philadelphia. So I know you're still believing that there's a chance the Eagles could win the whole thing. Obviously, it's more of a daunting task now with Carson Wentz out. Looking at the rest of the NFC with just how deep this conference is this year and the competitive balance in the conference, give me another team or two that really catches your eye that you really like. I know the Saints are going to be on a lot of that list. Some people, they believe in Minnesota, some don't, because some people are still skeptical of Case Keenum, but he's played very well this year. Who are the two teams that you like the most in the NFC if you take the Eagles out of the conversation?
I would say this. I've been saying the Saints all along. I've been saying that for 2 months. That I know they started 0-2, but they've been on a really good roll since then. They're a different Saints team than the team we've seen in other years. They run the ball much better. Now they need to have Kamara back. They lost him with a concussion the last game, and that was their offense kind of left with him. But I'm assuming he'll be back, and if he comes back, then their offense is very good. The combination of he and Ingram can really run the ball, and of course you have Drew Brees, who's a guy even on a bad week is going to complete 70% of his passes, and knows how to play in these late season games. So, and the defense is much better than the Saints teams of the recent past. So I see the Saints as a very complete team that has a lot of different ways that they can beat you, and they have a proven, battle-tested veteran quarterback who's won a Super Bowl. So I think that makes them very dangerous. And the other team is Minnesota, and you just can't ignore what they've done. I know a lot of people are kind of looking past them, but you can't look past that record, and you certainly can't look past that defense. I think it's the best defense in the NFL, and that'll keep them in almost every game. But getting back to the idea of what we started this whole conversation with was Nick Foles, and I know there are a lot of people right now that in the handicapping, and I just saw the Vegas handicapping today, that in the NFC the Vikings are now the favorite. And a lot of people are saying now it's the Vikings because the Eagles are playing with their backup quarterback. Well, Case
so are the
Keenum's
Vikings. He's the third string.
Case Keenum's a backup quarterback too. And if you look back through the history of the Super Bowls, 7 Super Bowls were won by backup quarterbacks. So it has happened before.
No question.
But in answer to your question, if I had to pick two teams that I think represent the biggest threat, Atlanta's getting hot at the same time that they got hot last year, so you would not discount them. But if I had to pick the two, I would think the two that have been there all year, and that's Minnesota and New Orleans.
Will the Packers get into the postseason with now Rodgers returning?
I kind of think not.
Agreed.
Their schedule's pretty tough.
Yep.
I have all the respect in the world for Aaron Rodgers, but to come back cold after sitting out all that amount of time and just step right in there and expect everything to fall into place that quickly with some of the tough games they've got coming up, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. There are a lot of teams on the edges here. Seattle is still not out of it. Carolina's obviously not out of it. The Rams are probably still in it, although they have a couple tough games. It's going to be a real scramble for those last two spots. And Green Bay's in the mix until they lose another game, but I think the odds are kind of stacked against them.
If you had to make a vote today, who's your coach of the year in the National Football League?
I'll tell you this: if the Eagles finish 14-2, I'd be hard pressed not to vote for Doug Peterson. I really would. I think he's done an amazing job when you consider not just losing Wentz and winning 14 games, but losing all the other people they've lost. I mean, Sproles and Peters and Hicks and Margos and the punt and the kicker, and I mean they've had a lot of injuries, any one of which could have derailed this team. So to get them through all of that and be 14-2 and the number one seed in the NFC, I have tremendous respect for what Sean McVay has done in Los Angeles. I mean, turning that situation around in 1 year the way he did, I mean, that's a great job of coaching. But just on the basis of this 1 year, if the Eagles finish as the number one seed in the NFC with everything that they've had to overcome this year, I would absolutely cast a vote for Doug Peterson.
Now, I remember doing shows in the summer and the skepticism of Doug P., and I was skeptical of him. I wanted to see what he was going to be able to do this year. I wasn't saying he can't coach in this league like some others, but I was someone that was definitely skeptical of him. The job he's done this year, I just have a great sense of confidence in him right now. What's the biggest difference you see from last year to this year with the coach of the Eagles?
I don't know. I think he's handling in-game situations better. I mean, he's still taking the same aggressive approach to play calling. He's still going for it on fourth down more than any other coach in the league. He doesn't make me scratch my head with his play calls as much as he did last year. I mean, there were stretches last year where I would just say, "What is he doing? What is he thinking here?" I just couldn't figure it out. There's less of that this year, and I think he has shown a little more adaptability within games, and I think he has a very good relationship with both of his coordinators. I think Reich and Schwartz work well with him, Reich in particular, that in games, if things aren't working, that they seem to make the fixes on the fly that get things straightened out, and that's a good sign. I think back to a couple games, but specifically the Dallas game. The first half of that game, the offense was really bogged down. I mean, they had 5 consecutive 3-and-outs, which is the most that they've had in any game this year. And the fact was that they just weren't running the ball very much against a team that has trouble stopping the run. And they went in at halftime, and I think he and Reich and the other coaches, they got their heads together and said, "Hey, you know what? This isn't working. Let's come out here in the second half and really get the ground game going." And they did. I mean, they changed the whole game plan. They came out in the second half right from the first possession, drove it right down the field, running the ball, scored, and then they were in complete command. And that was, that's the kind of thing that you see really good coaches do is, they'll have a game plan coming in, but if it's not working, they're able to change and make the changes that are necessary and go out and win the game. And I didn't see a whole lot of that last year, but I'm seeing more of it this year. And, the coordination of the team is really good. They don't they don't waste timeouts. You don't see guys lining up offside. You don't see them with 12 men on the field. I mean, they play a pretty tight, crisp brand of football. And I think that's, credit to the players, obviously, but I think it's a greater credit to the coaches.
Ray, last one before we let the great Ray Didinger run from NBC Sports Philadelphia. I know it's almost impossible to predict any Hall of Fame with the process, and we know that some guys are going to get in some years, and some guys you want to get in, they don't get in. With T.O. and Brian Dawkins, we know that they're going to be Hall of Famers one day, but I was just booking my flight for the Super Bowl in the hotel, taking care of all the stuff for Radio Row, and I always love the Hall of Fame talk. Give me a little feel on Dawkins and T.O. for this year in the Hall of Fame process.
Well, I obviously think they're both deserving. I wasn't all that surprised that Brian. I know the Eagles fans thought that he was going to go in last year. I thought it was going to be a little bit of an uphill fight because it's just hard to get safeties in the Hall of Fame. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be the case. So I wasn't real optimistic. I thought he deserved to be a first ballot guy. I think he's that good a player. But I wasn't that surprised that he didn't get in. I think he might have a chance to get in this year. I mean, last year a safety went in. Last year Kenny Easley went in. John Lynch is still on the ballot. I think there's a lot of sentiment for John Lynch. Very often when you're talking about the small number of guys that can get in the Hall of Fame, very often the voters, I mean, they really shouldn't do this, but sometimes, and I was part of the process, so I know how it goes. Sometimes if they put one safety in, they won't put in another. I was always of the opinion, just put in the best guys, regardless of position. If it's all quarterbacks one year and they deserve it, put them in, But I think some of the guys kind of not. And if they look at the ballot and they say, well, okay, last year we put in Kenny Easley, this year we'll put in John Lynch, and that'll be the end of the safeties. That would work against Brian. But I mean, I think he was a guy that, in my mind, really changed the safety position. I mean, he made the free safety position a real impact position in football. And if you assume or you believe that like Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu are Hall of Famers, and I think they should be. I think they will be. Well, then you can't put them in ahead of Brian Dawkins, because I think Brian Dawkins really kind of created the position that they played. So, this could be Dawk's year. I hope it is Dawk's year. But I wouldn't say it's a guarantee. And with T.O., the problem with T.O. is there are a lot of guys there that just they thought he was a bad teammate. All the problems, all the baggage that he had in San Francisco, the way he left Philadelphia, a lot of that kind of craziness gets in the way of the vote. And this year this year Randy Moss goes on the ballot, and I think this is going to be a case where the voters are going to look at those two guys, and they're not both going to go in. I think one of them will, but I think it's going to be a case where the voters are going to have to choose between Owens and Moss. If I had to choose between them, I would probably take Owens. But I know there's some guys on that committee that just don't like him. I think it's going to happen at some point, but it wouldn't surprise me. I'm hoping at least one of them goes in this year, and I kind of hope it's Doc. But it wouldn't surprise me if maybe they had to wait another year. But I have no doubt, and I tell Eagles fans this all the time, I have no doubt that they'll both get in at some point. I mean, they're too deserving not to be voted in at some point, and I hope at least one guy gets that shot this year.
Ray, you're the best. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. Let's do it again real soon. We really appreciate the time.
Okay, Zach. My pleasure. Take care.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
so much. There's Ray Didinger, the Hall of Famer from NBC Sports Philadelphia, joining us right there on the David Lerner Associates hotline. Here's my thing with the Eagles. And you know me. I was all in on the Super Bowl this year. I started from about week 5 or week 6. I was ready to embrace that conversation. I gradually went from bye to NFC champions to Super Bowl. But I was bought in for the last few weeks. Is it possible that they could still win it without Wentz? Yes. It is possible. If you run the football more, if your defense plays flawless football, and Nick Foles protects the football. So it's possible. But is it likely? No. It's not likely. And that's just my gut telling me that. It really is. Because when I look at it, and I thought the Eagles were the most complete team in football before the Wentz injury. But he meant so much in the red zone, third down. And Nick Foles isn't going to be able to replace that, but can he be half of that? And it's a good backup, Nick Foles. And probably the best backup in the league. But I just don't feel, especially with how competitive the NFC is this year, and then the AFC, you're going to have Brady or Roethlisberger waiting for you in the Super Bowl. I don't see, and I believe they'll have the number 1 overall seed. But I don't see and I don't feel this team winning the Super Bowl and be able to win 3 playoff games with Nick Foles as the quarterback. I just don't feel it anymore. We're going into last week's game. I felt it with Wentz. There's definitely a drop-off with Nick Foles, and I just don't feel it anymore. Good backup. And the reason why he has not been a consistent starter since the 27-2 season. And I think he could win you some games. But is he going to be able to win you the 3 in January and February combined? Sorry. I just don't think so. All right, we'll take a break. 4:40, Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Back after this.